A storm was not background weather for an ancient human. It could turn the whole world into a trap. The tree that looked like shelter could become a lightning target. The dry stream could become a moving wall of water. The fire that made the night survivable could vanish in minutes. So the real question is not whether ancient people were scared of storms. The question is how they stayed alive when the sky suddenly became part of the danger. We cannot replay one Paleolithic thunderstorm like a film. Archaeology usually preserves stone, ash, bones, floors, and shelter traces, not the exact hour when rain started. So the honest answer has to be built carefully. We can ask what hazard storms create, what tools and shelters ancient people actually had, and what kinds of decisions would make sense without pretending every group did the same thing. The first answer was probably not bravery. It was position during a violent storm where you stand matters. Modern thunderstorm safety warns against exposed high ground, isolated trees, and flood channels, because lightning, wind, and sudden water move through the landscape unevenly. Ancient people did not need a printed warning to learn that pattern. A group that watched storms season after season could remember which ridge was dangerous and which hollow flooded first. That kind of knowledge would not look like a weather app. It would look like a route choice, a camp choice, or an elder telling a child not to sleep in a dry wash. It might be stored in stories about a place, in repeated seasonal movement, or in the simple fact that everyone knew where the safer overhang was before the dark clouds arrived. Shelter was the second answer, but shelter did not always mean a cave. Some groups used caves and rock shelters. Others built lighter huts, windbreaks, or temporary covers from wood, brush, hides, bark, grass, or whatever the local world offered. The archaeology at Ohalot II, for example, preserves evidence of brush huts and bedding. Later, Ice Age sites include more substantial constructed dwellings, including mammoth bone structures in some regions. Those examples do not mean every storm ended inside a perfect prehistoric house. They show something more limited and more useful. Ancient humans could organize space. They could make a sleeping surface. They could create a windbreak. They could turn part of the landscape into a place where bodies, children, tools, food, and fire had a better chance of surviving bad weather. The best shelter was not always the deepest cave. A deep cave could be cold, smoky, crowded, or already occupied by animals. A low overhang might protect against rain, but not against runoff. A forest could break wind, but also drop branches. So storm survival was probably full of trade-offs. Move lower, but not into floodwater. Get under cover, but not under the wrong tree. Protect the fire, but do not trap smoke around sleeping people. Fire was one of the biggest problems. We have deep archaeological evidence for controlled fire, including at Wonderwork Cave in South Africa. Fire could give heat, light, cooking, and social focus. But rain and wind can kill a flame quickly. If you lost fire in a cold storm, the problem was not symbolic. It could mean no warmth, no easy cooking, no light, and a harder night for children or injured people. So one likely storm task was fire protection. Not because we can see one person doing it, but because the logic is strong. People could move embers under cover, feed the fire with drier fuel, shield it with stones or wood, or keep a coal bed alive rather than a tall flame. The goal was not a dramatic bonfire. It was continuity, enough heat to carry the group through the weather. Water was another problem. Modern people often think rain means a free drink. In a storm, water can also destroy a camp. It can soak bedding, scatter ash, flood low ground, ruin stored plant foods, and make tools slippery or lost in mud. A good camp needed drainage. A bad camp could become a cold puddle with people inside it. That is why small choices mattered. Put bedding on a raised patch. Keep dry material off the ground. Place tools where runoff will not carry them away. Move children and older people toward the most protected part of the shelter. These are not glamorous survival scenes, but they are exactly the kinds of ordinary decisions that separate a miserable night from a deadly one. The body itself was also a shelter problem. Cold rain is dangerous because water and wind pull heat away faster than still dry air. Clothing, wraps, hides, fiber mats, and bedding would not have been fashion accessories in harsh weather. They were portable micro-shelters. The archaeological record for clothing is indirect and uneven, but thermal studies make the survival logic clear. Staying dry and reducing wind exposure matter. Storms also change sound. Rain can hide footsteps. Wind can carry smell in strange directions. Thunder can break the normal hearing of a camp. For people living close to animals, firewood, children, and darkness, that mattered. A storm could make predators harder to notice, but it could also make hunting or travel more dangerous for the humans themselves. So many groups probably stopped moving when the storm became intense, Not always, and not everywhere. If a flood was rising, moving was the only safe choice. But if lightning, wind, and darkness made travel risky, waiting under a known shelter could be smarter than pushing forward. Survival was not about constant action. Sometimes it was about knowing when movement made the danger worse. There was also a social response. A storm concentrates a group. People have to share space, decide who watches the fire, who gathers the last dry fuel, who moves gear away from water, who comforts a frightened child, and who keeps track of the exit if the shelter becomes unsafe. The storm turned survival into coordination. That coordination probably began before the storm hit. Humans are pattern readers. Dark cloud bases, sudden wind shifts, animal behavior, humidity, distant thunder, and the smell of rain can all become cues. We should not imagine ancient people predicting storms with modern science, but we also should not imagine them as helpless. Repeated experience can create practical forecasting without equations. A group that ignored early cues paid for it. If the storm caught you on an exposed ridge, you had fewer options. If it caught you beside a flood channel, you had less time. If all your dry fuel was scattered outside, your fire plan was weaker. Preparation may have looked simple: move sooner, gather fuel, cover bedding, bring tools inside, choose the safer side of camp. Children would have learned this by watching, not as a classroom lesson called storm safety, but as repeated behavior. When the sky changed, adults moved certain things first. They avoided certain places. They made certain jokes, warnings, or stories. Over time, storm knowledge became culture. It was not just in one person's head, it lived in the group. This is where the ancient world can feel surprisingly modern. Today, many people still make storm decisions socially. We ask whether to drive, whether to stay home, whether to bring things inside, whether the basement is safer, whether the road will flood. Ancient humans had fewer tools, but the decision pattern was familiar. Read the signs, protect the vulnerable, protect heat, protect the route out. What about fear? It would be strange if storms were not frightening. Thunder is physically huge. Lightning is sudden. Wind can make a familiar camp feel alien. But fear is not the opposite of intelligence. Fear can sharpen attention. The important thing is what the group did with it. Panic scatters people, shared routines turn fear into action. Some storms may also have become stories. A place where lightning split a tree, a cave where smoke once trapped people, a valley where water rose too fast. These memories can survive as warnings. We do not need to claim every myth began as a weather report. The safer point is that dangerous places become memorable, and memorable danger is easy to teach. The strongest evidence does not give us a single heroic scene. It gives us ingredients, shelters, hearths, bedding, constructed living spaces, clothing logic, mobility, and social learning. Put those together, and the answer becomes clearer. Ancient people did not defeat storms. They reduced exposure. They chose positions, protected fire, managed water, conserved warmth, and leaned on group knowledge. That may sound less cinematic than outrunning lightning, but it is probably closer to survival. Most lives are not saved by one spectacular move. They are saved by small correct decisions made early enough. Not that ridge, not that streamed, keep the embers dry, move the child inward, wait until the sky opens again. So what did ancient humans do during storms? They did what humans still do when the world becomes unstable. They looked for cover, protected what kept them alive, listened to people who knew the place, and turned fear into a plan. The storm was powerful, but the group had memory, fire, shelter, and each other. In a dangerous sky, that was the first weather system humans could control.